I am the voice of God. And anyone who doesn't like it will be hewn down.
On September 11th, 1857, in an unspoiled valley of the Utah Territory, and in the name of God, 120 men, women, and children were savagely murdered.
Mormons, do your duty!
We get told a lot, for example, in Australia about the sanctity of the family, and politicians talk a lot about the family, and it always has a capital F. And it's always held up as this wonderful institution, the family. And yet, for many people, a family can be a hellish place. And so this idea that we get tricked by words into not seeing the reality of something is quite dangerous.
He is everything a mother could want.
So we're gonna go to Ava's party tomorrow night?
You've said in the past that there's no virtue in protecting young people from the truth about the world.
It's a conviction I hold very deeply, that if you don't let people see reality, you're not doing them any favours. And I remember being very powerfully affected by a story I heard years ago about a Japanese film director who, as a child, had been in a city which had suffered a momentous earthquake which had caused over 100,000 deaths. And the day after the earthquake, his older brother took him around the ravaged city. And there he was at the age of 14, having to kind of step over dead bodies and not able to cross a bridge because of all the bodies that were blocking the bridge. And yet that night he went home and he slept peacefully. And he said to his brother the next day, "How could that be? How could I sleep so soundly after what we saw?" And his brother said, "It's what you are afraid to look at that has the power to disturb you. By confronting things, they lose their power over you." And I always took that story on board as something that was had a very powerful lesson for everyone. And I do feel very strongly that we live in a culture where too much stuff is concealed, where young people in particular are protected from the truth. Protection is often a euphemism for repression.
So would that be one of your great motivations for writing for young readers?
Very much, very much. And that's when I talk about writing realistic books and about my books being truthful, that's very much the agenda, that I want to present life in its raw state to young people and let them process it as they will. But that does mean sometimes getting into pretty uncomfortable topics and pretty unpleasant subjects.
But yet, of course, there's always this kind of attitude that, young people shouldn't be reading about these sorts of things.
I think young people are more exposed to reality than they ever were, but in an ugly and unhealthy way, because it's often done without a context. And so it's a bit like living in the slums in Victorian England, where you were exposed to stuff that you weren't meant to see. So little kids were exposed to sex, they were exposed to death and to illness and corruption at an age when they weren't actually able to process those things and when they weren't ready to see and understand those things. And that's the state we're in now, I think, where partly or mostly because of television, people are being exposed to stuff all the time that they're not actually ready for and that they're not able to process properly. In these books, there is the space and time given for the reader to process what's happening, because the characters are having to process what's happening. And so the thing flows between character and reader all the time.
Du försöker tjalla på mig, va?
Shit. Vad ska vi göra nu då?
Vi håller käften. Fattar du?
Innan vi börjar med struktur och prosa så skulle jag vilja börja med Niklas dikt.
Ja, den rimmar ju inte.
Riffelsen var rätt korkad.
Hallå, kan jag få säga någonting eller?
Men han försöker jämt vara så himla svår.
Men hallå, hör ni dåligt eller? Kan jag få säga någonting? Hallå!
Poems we heard in last class.
I didn't get Nick Powell's poem. It doesn't even rhyme.
What's your problem, man?
It didn't have to rhyme.
Can I say something? I wrote the poem.
Whatever, it sucked.
Is this a game? You think this is funny? Hello? Can anybody hear me? This way. You're the only one that can help.
Where'd you move the body?
What do you want the body for? He's dead!
He's not dead!
I'm out there dying!
Hang on, Nick.